All right, students, what's going on? This is our final unit lecture for History 31. Um, all right, finally, I got some time, and it's really difficult to get these lectures out during this COVID stay-at-home thing because I'm homeschooling my kids. My wife is a nurse, so she actually has to go put her life and ours at risk every day. It's a long day. Such is life. All right, here we go, man. Let's get after it. I'm gonna get part one of this out, and then we'll figure it out from there. Okay, here we go. Now, first and foremost, I want to say Unit 4. This is my favorite unit because, in my opinion, this is uh this is kind of where we're at now. This new breed. Okay, let's think of this concept. They're saying it's a new breed. What are they trying to say when they say it's a new breed? Okay. Um, you got to consider a few things. A new breed means you're dealing with a new type of person, somebody who has evolved. Okay. And so you got to remember, we just watched and seen throughout this class, right? We can go back to colonialism when the Spanish came and basically screwed everything up for the natives in Mesoamerica, aka Mexico, right? Which then starts the uh, purpose of this class. We started in Mexico, and then Mexico becomes independent, and part of their independence is owning all of the land up in Texas, New Mexico, California, Utah, Colorado. I think I forgot Nevada and Arizona, and then it was taken from them via the Mexican American War, right? And then Americans basically said, we don't like you. You got all kind of stereotype. We had all kind of stereotypes towards people of Mexican descent, and they pushed them out. Right? We talked about repatriate, all these negative things that they did. But whenever they need them, what's the only time that they need them? For labor purposes, right? They want to use the labor. Whenever they need them, then they'll open the door again. Okay, when they don't want them, they'll find all kind of unique ways to shut the door and then try to force people who are in here, many of them who are actually citizens, out. Right. So when you hear a new breed, you're dealing with somebody who understands all the tactics that America has ran on them historically. That they realize that actually we actually have power. You made us feel like, and you tried to convince us that we didn't have power, but we actually do. We have evolved. We are a new breed. You can't deal with me like you dealt with my grandparents. Okay, they might not have spoke English. I speak English and Spanish. I'm a little more dangerous than you because you only speak one language, right? So all of a sudden, you're dealing with a new breed, and that's important because this, even though the book likes to characterize the foundation for Mexican American culture in the United States with the wave of individuals that came between World War I and World War II, this is the foundation of the Mexican American mind state culture, the new breed, okay, the psychology of these individuals who are very different, okay, who said, you're going to have to deal with me differently than you dealt with my grandparents. No, no, no. You can't run them same tactics on me, right? And that's why I love this unit because this is important, okay? So here we go. A new breed, a new breed, a new breed. We'll start early on and you're going to see the establishment of mutual aid societies. This is nothing new. We already talked about mutual aid societies. What's the purpose of a mutual aid society? Well, it's in the title, mutual aid. It's providing aid for individuals who might not be able to get some things on their own, right? So it's a pooling or pooling collective resources from a particular community, from a church. You see these things all the time. Um, Financial aid is mutual aid. It's all the same thing, right? It just depends on the source. That's all. That's all they're trying to talk about. Okay, but why these are important, and the purpose of them is to help people in need. Okay, what these mutual aid societies begin to do is they begin to establish organizations, okay, in local provinces that will allow people to get their problems met. Okay, and by doing this, it also creates conversation. It also creates dialogue. Okay, and individuals begin to talk about all the problems plaguing, particularly who? Mexican Americans. Okay, mutual aid societies also can reinforce culture. So these societies are very important for several reasons. Okay, but the key is the dialogue that will be created when they come together. We need these things, but we also got these problems. And how do we solve these problems? Man, this is important. This is very important. Okay, let's give you some examples of those. The Sons of America. This is an example of one of those mutual aid societies that would move into something a little more heavy-handed. Okay, founded as it states in San Antonio in 1921. Now here's the key word here. It says first consciously Mexican American. The key word here is conscious. Okay, and so what we need to understand when we see that term, people like to throw out the word woke, and this person is woke. When we see that term, conscious, what they're trying to tell you is these people are conscious of what is going on around them politically. Okay, what's happening with politics, what's happening with racism, discrimination, what's happening with jobs, all of these type of things, they are essentially alert and aware. Okay, and when you are conscious of these things, you then begin to create safeguards to protect against what these individuals may be trying to do to you. Okay, that's also equally important. That's why these mutual aid groupings are very important. That's why people still need to have them. These groups still need to exist. These political entities still need to exist because you are currently watching a president who is deliberately going after certain people. Deliberately, right? And so if you're not woke, if you're not conscious as to what's going on, it takes away power. That's what it takes away, power, right? You should be able to stop things politically when you have power. In the state of California, Mexican Americans should have a ton of power because of the population base. Okay, so this is why we want to make sure we understand that. What else we got here? Okay, assisted Mexican Americans in achieving acculturation. Okay, acculturation. What does it mean, acculturate? Acculturation is integrating into the society that you were in. Okay, so what you see here is they're pushing Mexican Americans to acculturate to American society. There's pros and cons to this. Pros and cons. The pro is, yeah, you should be able to assimilate into the society in which you're living if you're not in a society where you're the dominant culture. That's true. You should be able to do that. Okay? However, in trying too hard to acculturate, you might put some of their cultural traditions and habits and deals ahead of yours. Okay, and one of the things in this generation, that the one thing that they did wrong, in my opinion, is they really tried to make their kids speak English strongly. So strong that sometimes that those same students wouldn't even speak very good Spanish. Okay, and so when you don't speak the language of the country in which you are from, or maybe the country in which your parents are from, there is a huge cultural disconnect that you will not fully understand. Okay, and that's the key to that's the key to that. Let me say, not that's not the key. That's one of the bad things of forcing acculturation. Okay. They sought out educational opportunities. And see, one of the things that they learned is that they needed, this is very important, these two bottom points, political representation at all levels. This is as important today as it was then. See, political representation is extremely important for several reasons. Okay, let's go ahead and break this down. Okay, sometimes I gotta sit back. Sorry, I'm gonna get comfortable. I'm gonna be here for a minute. Sometimes I gotta sit back and break this stuff down to you because I want you to understand. Damn, that's loud. I want you to understand the significance behind political representation and voting. Okay, I think I've gone through this with almost every class that I've ever taught. I always say, what's the 2 ways that you can create change in America? 1 is voting, and 2 is through the courts. Okay, well, voting then becomes extremely important. Extremely important. So when they recognize consciously that we need political representation at every level, that's because they're seeing, well, if you want to create change, we got to vote people in who care about our issues. Okay, and who better to vote in that care about our issues than our own people? And then we got to get the people that we vote in who care about our issues. Okay, we then got to get them to pass legislation, or at least push legislation that will impact us, right? So it's not just, you know, a one-trick pony type of deal. You need political representation at each level, because that's how you impact, that's how you create legislation, meaning laws or opportunities for people of your particular culture, right? And so that's what they are trying to do, and they recognize the importance of that and the importance of voting. All of this happens 2 ways. Remember, don't forget I ever told you this. 2 ways to create change in America. 1, voting. 2, through the courts. What does Donald Trump do every time he can't get something his way? He takes it where? To the courts. He creates some kind of crazy law. Congress beats it down, and he takes it to the courts, and he uses executive power and judicial power to change these issues, right? So just understand, sorry, okay? Just understand that that's how it works, and that's why this is so extremely significant, that these individuals had the ability to recognize that they needed to get political representation on all levels, because that's where it's at. You don't do that, hard to become a powerhouse in this country, okay? All right, let's keep going. A new breed, a new breed, a new breed. Okay, let's look at some of these other organizations that were created, like LULAC, League of United Latin American Citizens. Okay, some organizations are going to group all Latin American citizens. Some organizations are going to group all Latin American citizens together, all Spanish speakers basically. Okay, so you're going to have people from Puerto Rico. You're going to have all kind of different people of Latin American descent in these type of organizations. But LULAC is very important. Okay, so what is it trying to do? What is it fighting for? See, again, it's conscious. It's advocating for, this is important, civil rights. Man, ain't that interesting? Okay, civil liberties. What are civil liberties? Okay, are you aware of what your civil liberties are? Right? All these things are of extreme importance. And I just kind of wanted to point these things. So they're advocating, as I stated earlier, for civil rights, living conditions, education, employment, end of mistreatment and discrimination, training of Mexican Americans in regards to doctors, lawyers, engineers, elite fields, all these things. This is what they're talking. Here's that proficiency in English thing again. Okay, there's nothing wrong with being proficient in English so long as you still maintain your own primary tongue, right? But when you lose that primary tongue, don't forget what you lose a lot more than anything is the culture. Culture comes behind that, okay? So this is just another example, if you will, of organizations that are conscious of what they're trying to do, what they're setting out to do, and what the problems they perceive to be in the United States. There we go. Now, this video, unfortunately, it doesn't load when I'm in lecture mode, so I can't play this video for you. It's a wonderful video that reenacted they call it a doll test. Yes, a doll test, okay? So one of the things that was going on, what you need to understand, is schools at this point in time in American history were segregated. That means that, they weren't allowing people of different races to integrate in regards to going to the same public schools together. Okay, now, what would be wrong with segregating schools? Well, They called it separate but equal. Okay, the judicial court, the Supreme Court, basically came to the decision and said that segregation is a-okay so long as everything is equal. So separate but equal. The problem is, like I know, everything ain't gonna be equal. Okay, hence the problem. Now, with that said, okay, there's ways that you can fight against this. Protesting is not going to get it done. Okay, there's only two ways to what? Change things in America. Through the courts or by voting. If you ain't got enough manpower to get it onto a bill and vote on it, then we're left with one option, okay, the court. Now, I'm bringing these two cases up, okay, which is the Mendez versus Westminster and Delgado versus Bastrop. These court cases are huge because they set a precedent that will be utilized in only the biggest court case, one of the biggest court cases ever in American history, which is Brown versus the Board of Education. So most people have heard of Brown versus the Board of Education, but most people don't know that one of the two of the key cases that the court used to make their judgment was based on Mendez versus Westminster, that of course took place in the Mexican American community in California. Okay, so many people don't know that the Mexican Americans also shaped a major role in the integration of schools in the United States of America. Okay, so it's important that we understand these roles. So what happened? Basically, Mendez was a family who lived directly across the street from a school, but it just so happened to be a white school. Because of their last name, the children were not allowed to go to the school. They had to go across town to the school for Mexicans. Okay? This is in California, by the way. All right? So they had to go across town. Now, what comes of this simply is they say, wait a minute. You mean to tell me I got school right here, you're going to make me inconvenience myself and go all the way to the other side of town all because my kids are Mexican? Well, this is discrimination. This is discriminatory action. Okay, so they took it to court. And essentially the court ruled that, yeah, it doesn't make any sense for them to send. That's not fair, basically. That's what the court said. Now, let's go back to this doll test that I was talking about. In the Brown versus Board of Education case, which was fought by the NAACP in the Supreme Court, okay, they did a doll test. And what they did is they gave African American students a test in which they had a black doll and a white doll. And essentially, what they did is they asked them all of these simple questions, like which doll is a pretty doll, which doll is a smart doll, which doll is the doll that everybody likes, which doll. They asked them all these questions. Okay, 86% of the black children said that the white doll was the smart doll, the pretty doll, all of those things. Basically, what they're showing you is psychologically, African Americans have accepted that, at least because of the time and what was going on in that era through segregation, that white people were superior to them. Okay, well, they ran this same doll test in Latino communities in Latin America, and guess what? And they had a brown doll and a white doll. Guess what? Even in the Latin community, the darker skinned individuals accepted and thought that the lighter skinned individuals were superior. So what they began to recognize, the Supreme Court, is that psychologically, by segregating schools, you are creating inferior complexes, and you have individuals who are essentially growing up in a society where they psychologically don't even believe that they are equal, if you will. Okay, let alone better. So when you factor all of this in, the Supreme Court decided through the 1954 Brown versus Board of Education case that we were going to integrate schools. So this is just really important to understand because it really, as I stated, it starts, it has roots in the Mexican American community through these two court cases, but particularly this one. Okay. All right. Good. New breed. Okay. Now, everybody believes, thinks, and knows that education is the way. And so one of the things that this new breed begin to do is they begin to preach the importance of education within their culture, okay? Having their kids, making sure that they were very well educated. Because with education, there's this thought process and theory that you can advance, and that is very true, depending on what you're doing, right? But this is part of what the new breed is about, and this is why things are going to evolve, particularly in that community. Okay, so what are things that help with educational starts? Well, the earlier you start, the more of a head start you have on others, right? So, if you've heard of Head Start, all of these type of things are utilized to give kids a head start academically. Also, it's partially daycare as well, right? Scholarships. What's the purpose of a scholarship? To fund somebody who might not have been able to afford going to college to go to college. Well, what does that do? Well, let me just give you the plain out basics, okay? Let's talk economics real quick in this particular class. Okay, I always do this one too. The median, the median in California, not even a median, the poverty line in California. If you make less than $56,000 a year, then you essentially are considered below the poverty line in California. All right, why do I throw that out? Because I want you to understand the logistics of people who have high school diploma, the AA, BA, MA, PhD. Okay, now, this is not absolute. I want to make sure I make that point. This is not absolute. But generally speaking, if you do not graduate high school, the average income that person usually is going to start out with, whatever type of job they get, is anywhere between $45,000 and $50,000. Okay, that's below the poverty line in California. Okay, if you have an AA, they say your average job, if you can get into a professional career, you're going to start out anywhere between like $53,000 and $58,000. You're teetering on the poverty line at that point. If you have a BA, you're supposed to be starting out anywhere between $58,000 and like $63,000 in that range. An MA, you should be starting out at about, which at least at that BA, you're like right above the poverty line. MA, you start off in that like late 60, 65 to 75 range, anywhere in there, which again is above the poverty line. Anybody with a PhD usually is going to start out in that 80 and up range. Now, this is not absolute. Okay, they also say a person with a degree over their lifetime will generate almost $2 million more in their career of earning, $1 million more in their career of earning than somebody who does not have a college degree. So it's significant. There is value placed on your education in regards to the amount of money that you will make because of it. Okay, so pushing this education is extremely important. And this is why they created these scholarship funds to get individuals, individuals a chance to get there. Okay, that's what this is all about in the end. I know my wife paid for the majority of her college career through scholarships that she earned academically. I paid through mine through scholarships that I earned athletically. But the bottom line is this opportunity gave me and my wife a chance that we would have never had these scholarships not existed. Okay? All right. Which changes the scope of life. Okay. Just making the point that once when these organizations get national, when they get that big, that's always a good thing. because they have more resources, it's more expansive, and then you have more of a chance to actually put people in political positions. Okay, so the expansion is key. Expansion is key. Okay, all right. Now, oh, the Longoria case. Okay, so post World War II. Now let's remember what happened. Okay, prior to World War II, we had the Bracero program. Remember? And when the recession hit, they really wanted to get all of those braceros that they brought in out. So they created the repatriation program, which sent them back to Mexico, even sent people who were born here in the United States, who were actual American citizens of Mexican descent, back to Mexico. Okay? So what we see is these are national-led, very discriminatory programs put in place, right? The Longoria case is another example of the discrimination throughout the United States. So the Longoria case takes us to Texas, where a Chicano, which we're going to start talking about, I love that term, Chicano, Chicano veteran, meaning a man of Mexican American descent who went to war, for the United States. Okay, this individual, when he died, was to be buried, and he was, because he had stripes, right? He was supposed to be buried in a white cemetery. But what's interesting is in Texas, they would not allow him to be buried in the cemetery because he was not white, okay? Which even shows you that even in death, these individuals were still very discriminatory in practice. It's amazing to me that even dead, I can't lay next to you. It's just crazy, right? Think about that. So it's important, of course, to understand that actually happened, man. These examples I'm giving you, these are real, man. It's mind-boggling. It is. It truly is. But yes, this happened right here in the United States. Okay, so this is just one example. There's other examples of the different discrimination that Chicano soldiers faced all the time while they were in the military, even at times being in military garments and still being refused entry into certain restaurants in Texas simply because they were Mexican, or I should say Mexican American. Okay, so I mean it's absolutely interesting when you really begin to break this down, just how discriminatory we've been. Okay, so American GI Forum, political action. Yeah. So basically, what I'm talking about, these things will be challenged, and the reason why they had to be challenged in the court system is because they're not making laws to change it. And let's never forget, there's only two ways to create change in the United States, which is either through, and this was another video. This is why this is blacked out. Which is either through the court system, of course, and voting. All right, but we ain't nothing to vote on if I don't got a chance to vote, right? So that ain't fair. So yeah, it's just a lot of craziness that you are seeing, but this is part of the process. All right. As other Chicano organizations begin to develop, these are good things. It just means more. More people are becoming active. If more people become active, the higher the odds and chances are that we can get people in political positions of power who actually care about the Latino plight, who actually want to advocate in Latinos, or well, let's keep this about Mexicans / Mexican Americans, who want to advocate on their behalf. Okay, that's important. It's so important to understand, because this is how you begin to change the game, so to speak. Okay. All right. And no better a person when we're talking about a new breed of individuals to talk about than, of course, this young man by the name of Cesar Chavez, who will forever live in infamy in the Mexican American / American culture. Okay. He's a titan in U.S. history, not Mexican history, in U.S. history. Okay, this guy is the real deal. Now, Chavez, okay, what did he do? Again, we're talking about a new breed. Remember, I entered saying, you're going to have to deal with me differently. How you dealt with my grandparents ain't going to work, right? This is the quintessential example of that, okay? Now, what he is going to advocate for is the right of farm workers, okay? Many of these migrant workers who are living in these camps, who are being mistreated, who are not being, we've seen it from the Harvest of Loneliness video, um, just how mistreated these individuals were, I should say, how underpaid these individuals were, just all the problems that were plaguing these individuals, and they couldn't unionize. What's the purpose of a union? I'll say this again. I'm sure I said it before. Unions serve but a few purposes. Number one, to fight for your wages. Number two, to fight for your workers' safety. Number three, to fight for your workers' hours. Number four, to fight for your benefits. Essentially, I feel like I'm going to get one, but essentially, that's what unions do. They protect your pay. They keep you safe at work. Okay. They get you benefits and they fight for your working hours. That's the purpose of unions. And they do a wonderful job of it. If you're not allowed to form a union, okay, that means you can't grieve to the business owners. And if you can't grieve to the business owners because you can't form a union, then you don't have any power. Because what's the number one form of power that unions have? What do they do to threaten you? Not threaten you, but threaten the owners to get the owners to listen to them. Well, of course, strike. That's what it's all about. If they strike, they slow down production. If they slow down production, the business owners don't make money. Let's not forget, this is what this is all about. Everybody goes into business to make money, period. That's what it's about. Nothing more, nothing less. Okay? All right, good. So, they started La Huelga. For those of you who do not know what La Huelga means strike. Okay? So they went on strike, and Cesar Chavez adopts this doctrine by the individual who you see here in the back of this picture, which is Gandhi. Okay, also influenced by Martin Luther King as well. They start a non-violent crusade for human dignity and civil rights for these migrant workers. Okay, so they're going to use non-violence as their number one tactic. Okay, and that's what they're going to do in regards to their strike, to bring attention to their problem, to create change. Let's always never forget, even though they were striking and protesting to get exposure, a lot of this stuff still is going to go through the legal system. Okay, now they were supported by labor unions, civil rights groups, all those type of things. That's good, because the more people who support your cause, the more exposure you can get, and of course, the more change that you can potentially create. Okay, I already talked about his Gandhi principles. Okay, now they did a march to the Capitol. You got to remember, all this is going on in California, in the San Joaquin Valley, literally right where you guys are now. And I want you to also remember, where is that? Hold on. I apologize. I don't know why. I thought I switched it. I fixed this, but apparently I didn't. His right hand gal. His key, his backbone to this whole movement was a woman by the name, please write this name down, Dolores Huerta, who happened to attend Delta College, who spent many years living where? In Stockton, California. Okay? So that's major, man. That's major, because here you have people right here from our valley, from where we are from. For those of you who grew up in Stockton and in the valley, who were advocating on your behalf, okay, before you was even thought of. So it's important that we acknowledge that, okay. So they gained attention through a large march to the Capitol, right? Similar, think of it similar to the civil rights march that Martin Luther King did, the civil rights march that Martin Luther King did in Washington. Okay, in '64, I want to say that. I can't remember. I think it was '64. I can't remember right now. Okay, and the other thing, see, now this is the key. This is the key right here. This word right here. This is the word everyone should know. Okay. What I thought that they did that was most effective in gaining a seat at the table was they were able to not just boycott and not just strike, but they were also able to boycott, but not just them boycott. They were able to get people throughout the world, or really throughout the United States, to boycott. And I want to help you understand how and why. Okay, here's why I love boycotts more than I love marching. Okay, understand something. When you boycott a company, what are you basically doing? When you are boycotting a company, you're telling them that because of the way that you treat me or people who look like me, I am not going to spend money with you. Okay? Now, if you can convince all the people who look like you to not spend money with somebody and you are the majority, you will get their attention very fast. Why do businesses exist? We just said it, to make money. If you ain't spending with them, they ain't making money. So now they want to hear what you got to say. But if you can get not just your community, but people outside of your community to relate to your plight and then in turn join your boycott, now you've really impacted these companies. And these companies are now not making money. And now that they're not making money, they have to come back to you and say, okay, hold on, what I got to get you to do to stop this boycott, because you kind of killing my bottom line here. That's why boycotting is better than anything else you can do other than vote on it or take it to court. Because you can march until you blue in the face, don't matter. You might have created some exposure, but when you get in somebody's pocket, you change their tone. You change their tone real quick when you get in their pocket. And this is what I like about what they did. Okay. So it's the boycott that's going to be key to the success. And by 1970, we see this 8-year crusade. It was actually a little bit longer than that. By 1970, they won, the Union won, first of all, recognition. And not only did it win recognition, it won essentially its, contractual disputes, and that's important. Okay, so that shows you what this is about. Is it shows you that the little guy can band together, and it can not necessarily take down the system, but alter the system and make the system respect and hear you and assist with your concerns or with with your needs in your community. And that's important. That's what this is all about, no matter what. Okay. All right. Reyes, Lopez, Tijerina. This is just another example of leadership during this movement. Okay. Now, he was from New Mexico, grew up in the migrant camps, and his thing was a land grab. Now, what his concepts, beautiful, loved them. It just wasn't going to go over well in the United States, But here's what his purpose was. Here's what he was going out saying. He basically saying, wait a minute, man, y'all unlawfully took this land from us through the Mexican-American War. And because of y'all taking the land, you removed us off of land that was valuable to us that we can no longer utilize to make money off of. You took that land and now you're making money. And now I'm working for you. This needs to be the other way around. We want to recover what was taken from us. Now that's powerful. It just ain't gonna happen. Okay, but that's powerful because what he's recognizing consciously is that in the land is power. Is that if we have land that we can then cultivate, we can do several things with this if we want to. Play this several ways, but the number one thing that land gives you is power. Never forget that. Never ever forget that. The number one thing land gives you is power. Okay? Because when you got a lot of it, you can do several things with it. It as the states formed an alliance with the Federal de Pueblos Libres. Okay? And this is just, again, you can't be a lone wolf. Very difficult to be alone. You got to have deep resources to be a lone wolf. You got to bring people together and you got to connect with other people. And as long as you guys have the same overall goal, you don't have to see everything eye to eye. You don't have to see how we get there, right? Like if I dropped you off on the south side of Stockton and said meet me at the mall, it's 20 different ways you can get there. I don't have to agree with how you got there, but you better meet me at the mall, right? That's the end goal. It's the same concept here. It's okay that we have different ways of going about it. The end game is this. We are all fighting for these individuals. And this is why this is so important. This is why this new breed, they were just very influential. Then we have Corky Gonzalez, Rodolfo Corky. His nickname is Corky. Everybody called him Corky. He's another individual, okay, who started his Cruzada para la Justicia, right? This guy is, I think he's out of, what is that state? Colorado, Denver, if I recall correctly. Okay, but again, what is he advocating for? First of all, against police violence. That sounds like something the Black Panthers was advocating for. That means even in these Latin American communities, they're experiencing a lot of police brutality, right? So this is discriminatory action that is funded by the state. That's crazy when you think about it, okay? He's talking about judicial race hatred, meaning the courts are even against this. See, there's this term that's flying around now called institutional racism. These are all examples of institutional racism. What is institutional racism? Institutional racism is when the apparatus, the state, meaning the power source, actually is carrying out racist or discriminatory practices towards a particular race of people. Okay? So when you have police brutality that is overabundantly happening in one community, man, you got to start wondering if somebody telling them to do that. That's an example of they got the power. They are the police. Well, and they're using their power, I should say, in a negative fashion. That's institutional racism. When the courts make laws that impact specifically a particular group of people, that's institutional racism. Okay, this is what he's talking about. Of course, again, everyone's fighting for education, adequate housing, employment, okay, civil rights, all the same things. Land reform. This land reform is key. See, if anybody, there's two people in California who should be mad. Anybody of Mexican American, everybody I should say of Mexican descent, anybody of Native descent, because y'all got screwed here. My family from the South, we got screwed down there. All right, but my point is, all of that belonged to those two entities until 1849, and the game completely changed. So that land reform is a big deal because again, this is individuals recognizing the power in land. There's a ton of power in land. Okay. All right, and then he's just very famous for writing this very long poem called "I Am Joaquin." It's a very great poem. You should read it. You should check it out. I used to assign it, but it's really long, and we then got caught in I call this the COVID semester, where everything is just upside down. So I don't talk about it. Okay, so good. So we're moving into El Movimiento, which means I'm going to stop part one. We covered a new breed, and so I'm going to allow this video to render, and I'll get this up for you late tonight or early tomorrow. Today is April 16th, 2020. Okay, so I appreciate those of you who really watched this whole lecture. There's so much information to gain, and of course we know that I ask lecture questions that will end up on your exam. So you always want to pay attention and be in tune with the whole lecture. Okay, y'all. Well, see you next time.